Okay, I mean, based on StreamYard, I guess you're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ruby Tuesday. Oh, no, hold on. Let me change the background. This is the old one. Yes, hello, everybody. Welcome to Ruby Tuesday 81. Oops, sorry. Okay, so today will be me and Gui, both of us here. Let's see. Yep, Ruby Tuesday 81. Today is 4th of May. Brought to you by Engineers MY for sponsoring StreamYard, and also, thanks for adding that. Great, totally forgot. Sorry, I was saying thanks to Engineers MY sponsoring StreamYard, and as well as Ruby Care Brigade. Find us on our Facebook group, KRXRB. Meetup.com is where we put all our events, so that's like the main. Sorry, that's like the where the all the events go up. So definitely follow us on Meetup. GitHub for all core related. We use Slack mostly for our day-to-day chat, so definitely join us in Slack. And we use Discord whenever there is a code clinic, so definitely join us there. Okay, I think I introduced myself already. I'm Gui, and Gui is joining me here today. Let's see. Feel free to comment on chat. Just remember that your profile name, picture, and comment might show up on the stream in case you want to highlight like any questions or any feedback or comments. Remember number 2, event code of conduct. So we follow the Ruby community conduct guideline. If there's any questions, please reach out to us or read the conduct accordingly. Right, hiring shoutouts. I don't think there's any hiring shoutouts from my end. Besides, like Faith is hiring Rails engineer. As always, you can always go to the Facebook group to see any jobs that interest you. Gui, any hiring shoutouts from your end?
Nope, I don't have any hiring shoutout for Rails or Ruby developers.
All right. Okay, so there's no talk for today. So I thought we can just do a very simple panel discussion with whoever's joining us. So, Gui, do you have anything you want to talk about? I do have some things I can bring up, but I'm wondering if there's anything from your side.
Yeah, I think there's one post by Tristan about that. But yeah, we can start with yours.
Okay. I can briefly talk about some things I've been like trying out and stuff like that. So one thing I've been just recently start using is TestProf. Let me zoom in a bit. So for those of you who don't know, TestProf is like a Ruby test profiling and optimization toolbox. So it's actually, there's a lot of tooling inside this gem itself, right? So they have like profilers for tests, they have factory-based usage analyzer profiler, they have helpers, and even specific Robocop corps just for test itself. As you can see here, TestProf itself has a lot of things. So I myself have barely scratched the surface. Right? I just run some like checks, like the factory doctor and stuff like that. And there's not a lot of changes on the code base I'm working on. So I can't exactly tell like there will be a lot of improvement. But as I slowly go through this, maybe in the future I might have something to share. I believe there was like a previous sharing in one of the Ruby Tuesday about this gem as well, but I can't remember which one. Yep. So there are talks and slides here to give like a quick introduction about what is this gem supposed to do, and because it's kind of extracted from real life problems. So the creator actually they work at Evil Martians, right, which is like a consulting based company, and they use this to reduce all the testing time, right? Because we spend a lot of time doing tests, and test is quite important for what we do. So having quick tests allows like quicker feedback and this sort of thing. So I definitely would kind of say, if you don't know about this, well, I guess this is an introduction. If you're using it and you find like that's good use case, maybe you can reach out to us and see if you want to give a talk about this. But on my side, I'm just like barely scratched the surface, just started using a bit of it. So yeah, that's one thing. Let's see what else. another recent thing that I kind of like bump into. Okay, let me scroll this zoom in as well. It's Mami or Endo Yuzuke, I think. Yeah, Yuzuke Endo. It's one of the like core committers to Ruby. So he did this project, I would say, a fun project where he kind of EM script Ruby. So what this allows him to do is he actually compiles Ruby to WebAssembly, and you can kind of run Ruby natively on the browser through WebAssembly. So it's just like a one-time fun project from him, I would say. So he even has like a demo link you can see here. Scroll in. Yep. So EN Ruby is a Ruby interpreter browser, right? So you can demonstrate MRI working on browser. It's experimental, and end, on the back end, it uses EN Scripton to kind of do the compilation from Ruby to WebAssembly. So it's for example, like these are all the Ruby code, and yep. So if you run it, you can see that this runs like kind of natively on the browser without going through a Ruby runtime. So it throws errors as well. It's still very experimental. I found out about this because he was actually presenting this in one of the Ruby meetups in Japan. I think Akatsuka, no, Ginza Ruby. So he was demoing this. My Japanese is not that great, so I couldn't understand a lot of what he was saying. But yeah, he was talking about this. He also had a very experimental IRB running on WebAssembly. I don't think it works because there's error. Yeah, so I'm not sure what works, what doesn't work. But yeah, it's like super experimental. I guess it's a proof of concept, you would say. Let's see. So we talk about EN Scripton, right? So EM Ruby is basically he runs Ruby against EN Scripton. So EN Scripton, from what I could understand, is basically a LLVM based toolkit that allows. Let me zoom in this. It's basically an LLVM toolkit that allows compilation to WebAssembly. So it might not be very applicable to what we do day to day, but I kind of like saw this and like, oh, that's cool. Like to know that there's this experimental stuff, and you can kind of do it as well. But yeah, should we add Tristan in? Hey Tristan.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going through like stuff I wanted to share.
Yeah,
with,
I was there in the beginning. I just didn't come in.
No worries. So yeah, this is kind of the stuff.
Did you know about the other one? The similar one, which is an interpreter, is Opal, but that is not like how the EM scripting thing that you did. So that is a full interpreter in JavaScript, but so it's not the Ruby code that is transpiled into Wasm into so that it runs in the browser. This one is a fully JavaScript type interpreter. So basically, it's a library that that you can write Ruby code in. So it evals basically Ruby code and converts it into JavaScript. So it's a different way of doing the same thing.
Yeah, but also this is like production ready because people are using this, right? And that one and though user case is really experimental, it's like really proof of concept. Yeah. So yeah.
And I'm guessing because it's running Wasm, so the advantage of Opal is because it's actually running JavaScript. You can have bindings with JavaScript. Like you can for example instantiate variables in JavaScript and then you can use it in your Ruby program. But in Wasm, I don't know if it's possible. I guess you'll have to do it something like a bridge or something.
There's like a part here where he kind of runs like the JavaScript function directly. So I'm not sure like how that exactly works, maybe. But again, this is like experimental, right? Compared to Opal, which is like a production ready library. This is like
I wouldn't say it's production ready. They still have it at 0.11, and I don't know if they're actually continuing to develop it. I guess because of Wasm, because the ideal case there is that if you can compile the Ruby, the C Ruby code into WASM and have it run there with just a few changes, then that would be it, right? That's exactly what you want to distribute as your Ruby on the browser.
Mm-mm-mm. Like it's a more native, it's closer to native compared to like going
Yeah.
through JavaScript. Yeah.
Well, not necessarily
Uh,
closer to native. There's less porting bugs because you don't have to redevelop everything. Like it's already C Ruby plus extra stuff to make it work on the browser. Versus, for example, re-implementing Ruby from the beginning, then
yeah.
you have to do it again over like what the other Rubies have been doing.
Yeah, and there's all that version compatibility as well. Right? That's why like
Mhm.
JRuby, I think, is slightly behind in terms of like version
Yeah.
with CRuby. But yeah, that's kind of my sharing. Jason, you got anything you want to bring up or anything you want to share? Or?
No, not really.
Okay, I guess today will be a short one then.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were going to talk about the thing that's happening on Basecamp.
Yeah, I don't know whether I really want to bring it up or not.
Mhm. Well,
uh,
not maybe not the one on Basecamp, but the one
the
on the
Rails.
Rails discussion, which is brought about by Basecamp. So there's a discussion list on governance.
Yeah, I think you can talk about this. So for those who don't know, Basecamp, the company implemented a policy in their company saying that they, I'm paraphrasing, but they say that there will be no political discussion inside internal systems, right? So the Basecamp internally that they use, they wouldn't allow any political discussions, right? But they are free to do so outside of internal
Yeah.
systems. So that, what's the term to use here?
Well, not. I think it's more specifically they don't want to use the Basecamp work account, like basically the Basecamp for Basecamp. They can have different Basecamp for those, but not the one used for work.
Yep.
So basically, like if you have, for example, a Slack group for, let's say, Slack group for Basecamp, don't do it at the Slack group for Basecamp, but you can join Slack groups with your other colleagues in a different account or a different Slack group. So basically, just don't do non-work stuff on work accounts. I think that's the gist of their announcement.
Yeah, and it kind of I don't know what's a good term to use here. Trigger a movement. I don't even know what's like the good term to use here, but it caused a lot of Basecamp employees were not happy with the change, so a lot of them actually resigned, and that include a lot of core Rails committers as
I
well.
wouldn't say that they necessarily resigned because of it. The DHH did offer a generous severance package. So basically, they said if you're going to resign now, this is you'll get this amount, right? And some people might think that, oh, I don't really like Basecamp anymore, and I'm going to take it. Of course, some other people will also say, I'm I think I'm in Basecamp for quite some time now, and I'd like to look for some other places to get an adventure, and maybe this is a good stopping point, because otherwise, if you resign like a year in the future, you won't get this generous severance package as the one that's right now, right? So it could be a combination of people who wanted to leave because of the drama, and people who just wanted to leave because it's a natural uh, stopping point in their career in Basecamp.
Okay.
Frankly speaking, I feel slightly uncomfortable talking about this whole thing, but yeah.
Yeah. So well, you have Rails governance up there on your screen share.
Yeah, I think because of that, people are concerned with the whole what's going to happen to Rails, right? Because Basecamp employees were resigning, and as part of that, they were resigning as part of the Rails core team as well. So I guess that kind of caused the community to be like, what's going to happen to Rails now, right? Because Basecamp has always been Rails has always been very closely related to Basecamp because Rails is an extracted framework from what a lot of what Basecamp does, right? And I think this post, which was 2 days ago, to help address the concern to the community that no, like, because even though this thing is happening with Basecamp, like there are still a lot of other companies using it, and basically they want to assure. I mean, from what I interpret from this is that they want to assure the community that no one has sole control over the framework or the community, right? Like it is there is a group of core individuals, and they have like separate teams for like the committer team and also the issue teams, which does the triaging. I think basically it's like, even though this thing happened, like Rails will still kind of maintain being Rails. At least that's my interpretation of it.
Yeah, it seems to be a quite diverse group of people on the core team. Do you know any of them? Is this list already besides the people who already resigned, or does this list also include the people who resigned?
No, it does not include them. So this list is current. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Of course, it's all open source, and there will always be like, if people are still not happy, they can always create their own community. I mean, they will split the community, but that's the thing, right? If you really believe that what your thoughts are reflected by many of the people in the community, then people will come support your fork. Similar to how MySQL got forked to MariaDB. So people just think of MySQL, but you're actually using MariaDB. Not a lot of people are still using MySQL itself, just because MySQL is now Oracle and people don't like Oracle, for example. And most of the contributions and most of the code being given is being committed to MariaDB instead of MySQL. So that can be a situation that can happen as well.
Were you using like Rails and Ruby during the MERP? I think it's pronounced MERP time.
Yes, I think we were still at 2.7. Was it 2.7? Like going to 3. I think that was the time when MERP got in. Rails 3 was like the big one where things got really smooth out. Like it became really, really easier, much easier to use.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Rails 3.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Like, what's your experience like? I mean, if you have, what was the experience like?
I didn't use MERB. I used 2.7. So, and I heard that MERB was very similar to Rails, and so a lot of the changes in 3 was influenced by MERB.
Right. Jeffrey mentioned that being part of like the Go Rails community. What's Go Rails? Is it Rails running
Probably,
on Go?
it's like no, it's like our community, like Ruby KL.
Oh, right. Okay.
Rails. I don't know though, like what like, so the thing is, it's difficult to contribute to a mature project just because whatever your contribution would be needs to be very how would you say, very impactful.
Like there needs to be like a use case for it. You can't just like I want this.
Okay, it's the Rails screencast community. So for example, most of the contributions they would be looking for would be documentation, but then again, a lot of people are already doing documentation for Rails, right? And so it's very difficult to contribute to Rails because at this point it's very mature, and then that any new contributions we need to be very impactful, like something like Hotwire, for example, which is a very different concept of doing front-end development. So those are the types of features that will get in. Unlike, for example, when it was still Rails 2.7, Rails 3, it can be quite easy to, like, let's say, okay, let's have a new database adapter for this, for MongoDB, or for example, or something like that. It might not even be Rails supported, because again, every new contribution to Rails means that the community will be maintaining it, right? Right. Instead of a plugin which or a gem which the author will be maintaining themselves, a new feature in Rails, like let's say active job, will be maintained by the community itself. It's going to be there going forward. It's not going to be okay, we're going to retire it, because once it goes to Rails, people will go and use it in production, and millions of applications are going to depend on it. And so it's not very easy to deprecate something once it's in Rails. And that becomes even more difficult, yeah, again, because it's mature. And though when you add something, immediately millions of applications upgrade to it, or like will probably think of using it, and then now you have your base to consider, and then you can't really just remove it just like that.
Yeah, I definitely feel like a lot of Rails 6 features, like for example, the multi-DB support, it came from like GitHub, right? And I feel like a lot of features a lot of features in Rails 6 are like that. Like GitHub will build, they have a use case, right? Like to support multi-DB, for example, and like Eileen, for example, one of the core Rails members, like will work on it, and once they have it running, then they'll kind of like extract and submit a patch to Rails upstream. It's like, hey, we built this, we're using it. And then I feel like that's kind of where Rails is right now. Like you mentioned, like it's a very mature framework already. And even like Hawaii is also an extraction of what Basecamp has used for hey, their email service as well. So yeah, definitely agree that.
And again, if people want to contribute to Rails, like for, let's say that MultiDB from GitHub, right? That's being developed separately, probably for months or years by GitHub. And the way you contribute is you test out pre-production stuff, that these things that are being that have millions of dollars of costs sunk into it, into feature development. Try it out yourself and see if there are bugs in your use case, and then you fix them. Because right now, like, it's not because there is like it's not difficult to contribute because people are preventing people from contributing. It's more like there's a lot of people, like really large groups that have things being contributed, and it's quite difficult to insert like a small change there. Like whatever it is that you're contributing will be considered less impactful than those big players.
Like the barrier of entry is higher. Is that what you're getting at?
No, it's not about the barrier of entry is very low. Like you can just fork Rails and contribute whatever you want, right? It's getting it merged back and have all of the other people use your code. There necessarily has to be some vetting process. There has to be like prioritization. People need to know that whatever it is that you contributed is well tested. And so getting it merged back in and have a lot of people use it, it's going to be quite difficult in that front. Unlike, for example, GitHub, if they say we've been using this in production for the past year, then that's already your test, right? Like people have tried it. Like a company bet their livelihood on this code. And so it's a lot easier for them to merge that back into Rails, because they know, okay, like what you're saying, they have a use case, and they've proven that this use case is useful because they've been using it themselves, and they've proven that this is relatively bug-free, at least in the use case that they've been doing.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that there needs to be a how do I term this? There's like a lot of effort into getting something merged, because it is a stable and mature framework, right? So you can't just like, oh, there's this thing I want to do. But like you say, if you are like GitHub and you tested this already, that's kind of a different story when they want to merge a feature in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
you can
agree.
do it yourself as well. Like you can fork Rails, do whatever it is that you want to contribute, show that people are using this, and show that this is not something that the gem can do. Or maybe that's the point. You can do it as a gem, and then later on it can just be part of the Rails stuff. Like I think this is similar to how Sidekick, people use Sidekick a lot, and then so a lot of the active job semantics uh, have been inspired by Sidekick, like how things work. So these are ways for people to contribute.
I think
It's
as a
not yeah, it's not a small time framework anymore where people
yeah,
like just do things, right?
yeah.
It's different in a sense.
I think in terms of like the contribution, the process and even effort, I don't think it's changed much over like maybe the past year or two. So I don't think it will change because of the recent incidents as well. So
Yeah. Oh, another way to contribute, and I think a lot of if you were if you saw a lot of Aaron Patterson's like presentations back when we still had physical meetups, many of his presentations centered around like performance benefits, and it's just a 1 hour talk, but you'll see that there's a lot of investigation, a lot of testing, benchmarking, etc. So that's something that you can try to do as well. Like the reason why you freeze uh, strings now is because it was proven that freezing strings make it like that number of percent faster for the whole framework. And there were benchmarks for this and etc. And then so that's why that change was done, where the Rails code base, all of the strings had dot freeze after it. So uh, there there are many ways to contribute. It's just that things either need to be impactful enough, they need to be proven through a use case, or that you have benchmarks, or that you have proof and evidence that this is a good change. And these things need to be documented as well, because uh, everyone, like all of these applications that are running Rails, will be dependent on the change that you are proposing. So
yeah,
the weight of responsibility is a lot heavier.
yeah, we don't want another my magic incident happening. But yeah, I know they have like a discourse forum as well where they used to discuss like stuff for even improvement. I don't know where is it, but I'm pretty sure like you can find it.
Yeah, it's also strange that people are asking about the like people like resign from the leadership of Rails because Basecamp is there, when if like the best way to influence and to guard against whatever bad things that might happen is to actually be part of the be part of the community and be part of the steering committee. Like that's how you make sure things don't go sideways. But if you leave, then who would be the guard against those, right? Yeah, so it's something that we really should like monitor and see what happens.
But yeah, it's to me it was reassuring to see like a lot of all these people. For example, like it's a Aaron Patterson and Raphael and also Eileen. Like I watch a lot of their talks and we just talk about all the things they're doing right now. So for me, it's like for them to double down on their commitment to Rails even after this incident was kind of reassuring for me at least.
Well, I'm not just I'm just not I'm just confused why. Well, not really confused. I mean, it was to expected. I'm just confused why people are linking a lot the what happened to Basecamp to what happened to Rails. So maybe it's just really the like that DHH is the original designer of Rails, because right now it's not, even though Rails started its life as Basecamp, and Basecamp is using like doing the a lot of the development based on what they're doing on Basecamp and it's being merged back to Rails. It's really not a Basecamp thing anymore. Like, as you can see there, Shopify is using Rails a lot. GitHub is using Rails a lot. I don't like if GitHub does something and things go sideways, will this have the same impact, let's say, as what's happening on on Basecamp and Rails? Like, let's say it instead of Basecamp, it was GitHub that had the prohibition of discussions of like all of these political things on work-related platforms. Will people start saying, "Oh, let's have a review of the leadership committee because GitHub is a major contributor and we want to make sure that things are still safe."
Personally, I wouldn't feel that would be the case. I think really the linkage with DSH because he was for one the
Yeah.
creator, and I think people see that because he's also very vocal about it till today, right? Like Rails as a framework. So I think because of that relationship, people see it very tightly coupled to him.
Yeah, and Jeffrey is saying that it's possible that people are working with DHH instead of actually what, and it just so happens that the thing at Basecamp and the thing that happened is just a good point to say, okay, this would be the last straw. I'm not going to do it, and then just like double down on what happened instead of just saying, yeah, I don't really want to work with DHH anymore, or like he's too opinionated, and I don't really like my working relationship, so I'm going to quit. So it could be that like most of the time, again, people don't really quit uh, positions because of the position or because of the company. It's usually certain people in a company that you would rather not see. That's why you leave, and that could exactly be what's happening with the situation right now.
Yeah, I feel we are speculating about it already, but yeah, I think like to wrap this up. I think Rails as a community and even the core team has already like doubled down on this, like this happening in Basecamp won't impact the work they are working on in terms of like the framework and the community. So, yep.
Yeah,
Right.
it will be nice if we can see like the actual things that happen. It's too bad that because it's a private company, so we don't really have any kind of information there, right? Because that can be, if people are getting worked up over this, then it might be something that we're just missing. Like, because this could have been happening in our companies as well, and we don't know. So it would be nice if we can have something to as a reference to, just in case something happens, similar happens, and we'd like to be prepared about it as well.
Yep, definitely. Especially like how worked up the community got.
Well, yeah, again, that work up, I feel is are just the people who are very vocal and the people who don't really mind it. Like I don't really mind what's happening because I don't know. Maybe it's just uh, I don't have the context. Like I feel that you should not really do non-work related things on your work communication, right? Unless that's something that's like if the company is doing uh, like CSR, like community relations, then of course you have to talk about it on your on the platform because the company is doing uh, like corporate social responsibility, and you talk about it there. But if the company is not doing it, you don't want to talk about those political stuff. Maybe even like let's like doing let's say asking people to go and do a demonstration because of this new law that's being passed, and asking people in your Slack group to come and join you. I don't know. I don't think that's something work related, and so shouldn't really be on the work platform. So I'm not sure exactly what happened, and so the people who are not very vocal about it or don't really have anything to say or just really silent. So again, that you'd probably hear the words the silent majority. But the people who are worked up over it are very vocal. They're on Twitter, they're on all of the platforms, they say things a lot. But I don't feel that that really represents all of the perspectives of the community. So it would be very difficult to say that the community was worked up over this. I would say a vocal number of people got worked up, and this is what is happening. Because I don't know, do you think that this is like did you join Twitter, the Twitter, I don't know, how do you call it, Twitteries? I don't know, the tweeting people in tweeting about this. I don't know if you have Twitter, for example.
I do. I was following it. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of nuances to it, and like you mentioned, right? It could be a very vocal majority that is like influencing how everybody is looking at it. I'm just stating that as an observation. But to me, this thing has a lot of nuances to it, which I don't think I want to discuss it here. But yeah.
Okay.
For-
So what are our next plans that is more development related rather than this related?
Gui, you have something to bring up earlier?
So following to that, the discussion about basically workplace culture, right? So this is all about workplace culture. And then in terms of Rails, it doesn't say that the Basecamp basically practice will apply to Rails platform. So if you are still in a Rails discussion, you are still free to discuss everything that you want. It's not applied. The private company practices doesn't apply to the public framework discussion. So like how people worked out is because they think they feel like they are part of the how to say, like in terms of working developers, fellow developers, something like that, rather than the user or the contributor to the framework itself. So because this doesn't apply to framework, so there's no ban on discussing or whatever in terms of Rails framework itself. It's just a private company practices. So like I think it's normal for people to have different opinion, like in terms of like paternity leave. Like different companies have different, yeah.
Oh, it's not. I think the thing that they're talking about, paternalistic benefits, is not about paternity leave. It's about
Yeah, I understand that.
here. Okay, all right.
So if I'm just taking example, like some company in some countries, they don't honor that, right? I'm not talking about Basecamp, it's like other countries. So if you are developers that enjoy that benefit, you will think like, oh, that company should do that. But in fact,
Wow.
it's a private company. It can do whatever he thinks that should their business need, their country, their work efficiency, right? So that's a private company decision. So in this case, I think everyone have their past working experience, right? Through the companies that we work through, we have gone through multiple different company culture. So yeah, I think it's all right. People went through this, like walked through this, like the earlier Node.js, IO.js issue. I think a couple of years ago when IO.js is forked out from Node.js because they can't reach a consensus on advancing Node.js. So in the end, yeah, things resolved, and then now back to Node.js. There's no more IO.js. So I think yeah, this is more on the company culture. In terms of platform, I do went through. I think I read through two platform as a service, open source platform as a service. One is called Coolify. Another one is called Porter. So it's
Gui, you wanted to share a screen or something?
let me see whether I can share.
If you can just pass me the link, I can open it up as well.
Yep. So Porter. So this is like Kubernetes platform as a service that runs, yeah, basically on your cloud. So you can host it yourself. It behaves similar as a Heroku. So it takes care all the background things like your VM, your resources on the server. Yeah, so everything is like click and stuff. Another one is called Coolify. So it's an open source, self-hosted Heroku and Netlify alternative. Yeah, I saw this too. I think it's quite interesting because you can host your own platform as a service if you want to. And what is happening in the background, you can look at the scripts and yeah, probably learn a bit. All this dependency graph. It's good. Yeah, this is the tool that I look at so far. I will share that in the chat. I think, yeah, I can share that in the chat. Let's share it out. And then qualify. Another one is so tracker. My company recently implemented dependency tracker because we wanted to track like what are the vulnerabilities of our app so that we will get notified instantly when there's a vulnerability here. So this is, I think, free to use. You can host it yourself, and it will pull the vulnerability database from the OSWAP's site, so you can hook it on. So far, we hook it on to our Rails and also Node.js front end, so we'll get notified if any vulnerability that we need to patch immediately. Yeah. So if you are interested in terms of dependency analysis, yeah, this is good.
It's self-hosted, is it?
Yeah, self-hosted. And there's a Docker to install. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it from my side.
Right. I thought Jeffrey had a question.
How is platform as service is different from DAS? DAS?
What is the AAS?
I don't know. DAS. Data as a service. Or DevOps as a service. Okay.
It's my first time hearing the term.
DevOps as a service. I think DevOps is more, how to say, more easier. So there's a lot of template for you to use if it's a DevOps as a platform, DevOps as a service. Platform as a service is more open-ended. Like you can do whatever you want. There's no very defined way of doing things because it's just a platform. Right? So DevOps, I think it's more on the whole solution. Like if you want to host an app, they will include a database for you, and then load balancer, the app VM, firewall. So it's like a package, some sort of that. For platform, you not necessarily need that. I don't know. Like what do you think?
Yeah, well, usually for platform, it's like everything, right? You have the whole the whole stack, whereas DevOps usually have like just particular ones, and then you can mix and match it with other things.
Anyone still using chef knife or yeah.
Ansible, yeah,
Okay. Ansible. Ansible is
it's Python, I think.
Python based. Okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter if you. It's only if you're uh, like hacking on the actual framework. Most of the recipes themselves are just they have their own DSL anyway. So you don't write Python code, you write Ansible installation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you ask?
Yeah, because I previously when I go to Ruby Meetup, a lot of people talking about knife chef kitchen like recipes,
Well,
but now it's like very less
it's
of those.
it's it's less because of Docker. Plus, also if you yeah, most of the large installations use Docker or Kubernetes right nowadays. But and if you don't, then Capistrano is more than enough. Like you can do automated installation of things through a Capistrano script. You don't really need like all of these convergent stuff from Knife or from Ansible. Like basically, like you just converge the packages or the setup of a particular server into that because the the speed at which to tear down and bring up a new server is very fast. Like you don't need to spend a lot of time to set up a server from scratch anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
that's probably the reason why it's not as popular nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do use a lot of Docker. I haven't done much on Kubernetes because I think it's yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
still
another layer of abstraction. If you have hundreds of servers to maintain, then yeah, probably Kubernetes that you want. You'd like that because you like to have like, okay, this I want five of these, and then from this pool, and then I don't care which ones. I would just want five, right? But if you only have like two, three, even up to 10, and they all you know exactly what these servers should do, then Docker or like just even like Linode instances or DigitalOcean
mhm.
droplets are fine.
Mm, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, you're probably going to need Kubernetes if uh, like if you're monitoring server uptime and that you get a
mhm.
pager duty or like a ping whenever one of your servers go down, then you don't need Kubernetes because you're actually thinking about downtime, right? But if
Mhm.
you just want things to happen, like you just want things to spin up when one of the servers die, let's say, because you I don't know, something like an unrecoverable error happened and the whole operating system crashed, and you just want a new server to come up. You're not even monitoring it. You just want to know that you have you have five database servers within the last 30 minutes, then that's where you go Kubernetes.
True. Yeah, I guess
That said,
mhm.
is Kubernetes really something a lot of Rails developers still use? Like, do the Rails developers nowadays know how to configure Kubernetes and Docker?
Well, in the place I work in, I don't touch the infra layer at all. Like the web app is being hosted using Kubernetes, but it's all like automated through CI/CD. Right? If I
Yeah,
merge to
someone set it up for you, and then now you just have the
yeah,
instructions. You get push here, or you do these commands, and then it gets deployed.
yeah.
Mhm.
How about you, Gui? I guess you start off new
Yep.
projects as well, right? You don't
So yeah, I
run
started
existing.
with designing the stuff. So currently we are still very bare bone. I would say previously we do SS, I think git pull and then build the container inside the VM. Now we are doing CDCI through Bitbucket, so we use their pipeline to do that. But still, it's still SSH. We haven't go to the very automated way. Still SSH and
I
Bash.
I don't know though. Sometimes I feel that these automations can be more expensive when it's just doing the same thing. Like just so because there's automation, right? Because I
Mhm.
one of the projects I was working on, we took a $5 Linode and
Mhm.
I set up like a Capistrano script to get that deployed, and that's like it's $5. Like all of like, it's a staging server, but we also have staging servers with CI/CD and etc. And instead of doing a new one of those, which would cost like maybe a few hundred US dollars for the whole pipeline to get installed on Google Cloud Console, Kubernetes, Docker, etc. With all of that thing, then you only have $5 for that for a staging server, and everything it's working just as good as any of the stuff that we do. And so sometimes like so even if it's as simple as doing a git push, sometimes it's not worth it to have all of these
Mhm.
automations, especially if you just have like a single application that can that that just has like it's just your normal run of the mills Rails application. You have database, you have Redis, you have a front end, you have like basically a Webpack, uh, Yarn compilation or build system, and then you have your actual Rails application. Like all of these don't really need to be automated outside of the build process that you can do on your computer and then just transport over the artifacts to the server.
Mhm. Correct, correct. Yeah, I'm looking into package into container image because now it's still building because there's dependency in terms of
Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing about building. Like I'm one of the things that allowed. So it used to be that deployment took over an hour,
mhm,
like whether staging or production, because the building happens remote. And so the Capistrano script that I made for deployment to the Linux server does the build process local, and everything just gets are synced over as part of the build process on the server side. Because you have like what like 6, 12 cores on your local computer. It's going to be very fast, compile things local. It's exactly the same thing as if you've compiled it on your, uh, like on the other side, on the remote. Even if you're doing a Docker build process, you can build the Docker local and then you just push the Docker image over. I'm not sure why you would want to build your your JavaScript and your gems and whatever on the server with 4 gigabytes of RAM when you have like 32 gigs or 16 gigs on your local server or and in a lot faster CPU. So all of these things like it's I was asking about whether Rails developers still understand what how they're deploying things because these are the things that you would only notice when you're actually doing like the deployment yourself from scratch. Like you
mhm.
understand what does it mean to deploy something to the server because that way you can find out okay yep why are we spending this amount of time why are we wasting time waiting for a deployment to happen when you can just do things here and then okay something needs to be deployed you just change it quickly and so the whole life cycle gets shortened so you only get to know these you only get to work with these efficiencies if you actually know the process from end to end.
Yep, yep, correct. So normally this kind of privilege only available for startups because the pipeline is
Yes,
not
well,
there yet.
yeah, well
For
again it is for startups, but it's the same for like when you want to look for efficiencies, right? Like
yep.
what especially for long-term startups, like what went well 5 years ago may not necessarily be the best thing today. And it might be just that people got used to how long things get deployed for
Mhm.
5 years. And maybe okay, uh, it just so happened that in the backlog that we were working on, the product owner saw something that was written 3 years ago. Like improve the deployment, staging deployment, and so that's why we worked on it, and that's the benefit there. But if none of the team actually knows how to deploy an application, because this was set up 5 years ago, let's say, right? And none of the team right now knows how to do it because the people who set it up have already left, then it's going to be a problem. Like you don't even know where to start optimizing the whole build process.
True. Yeah. Yeah. Correct.
And
Correct.
it's probably something that we need to also talk about as a community, as a Rails community, is that the point of DevOps is not pushing the work of all of these infrastructure to another team called the DevOps team. That's like the opposite of what DevOps means. It's about people like developers knowing how operations work.
Mhm.
Because if you, I don't know if you've worked in a traditional software development company before. We would have a database manager, like
Mhm.
who, like if you want to do a migration, you give the migration stuff to this Oracle database manager. These are the new columns I want, like, and then they'll figure out, okay, what indexes should be done, what are the names of the indexes, because what kind of queries are you going to do. So they'll figure it out and they'll do that there. So we don't do the migration, they do it. So Rails has the migrations there, but they still are going to vet it. You'll have your network operations people who does like all of the um, web server stuff, the routing, the IP tables, whatever. You'll have I don't know, network. There's the network operations stuff. You'll have the people who do API, the abstraction API from the inside of your company to, like if you're working with a telco gateway, that the API the gateway communicates and then your company communicates with. So there's a lot of people involved, and people who work on the software side don't necessarily know what these specialized specialists are doing, and that's where the DevOps movement come in. That developers should know what the hell is happening on these operations, because there's a lot more efficiencies happening. And unfortunately, what's happening now is that you're actually getting a DevOps team who doesn't do development on the software and are still doing operations. So you still have the operations people, they're just called differently. They're just called DevOps now. And with it, even before they had specialized fields where you know exactly what to expect from them. Now you just don't know what to expect from them because apparently they have a lot of responsibilities.
Yep. And they have templates that try to fix all, but application from different stacks have different behaviors, different way of behave.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's true that developers will have the chance to optimize if they're involved in the deployment part, but don't have that much of I think exposure now compared to previously when people actually talk about deployment. Now it's like deployment, use this, use that.
Yeah. Well, Jeffrey is actually asking a good question, like uh, limited resources. So maybe good that can be a good workshop next week. Like there can be a code clinic. There can be also be a workshop on how to deploy to a DigitalOcean droplet or Linode server.
Yeah, we call
Yeah.
it include it as a topic.
Mm.
Yep. Yep. I think that will be
Because
good.
I feel that if someone calls themselves full stack, then deployment is part of the thing, right? Just you're not just a software developer. If you say you're a full stack developer, you include the stack. That's from the beginning, from the end. And actually, I'm also thinking if you say full stack, then you have to do at least one mobile front end, because that's
Wow.
like the tail end of the stack, right? It can be React Native or even Ionic or something like that. But you have to understand how is mobile different from web from desktop, right?
Yep.
Like what are the things that you can do on mobile that you can't do on desktop? Because that's part of the full stack. Because otherwise you can't. I feel that calling someone full stack without knowing the front, the the initial parts, which is like your servers and like your database, etc., and without knowing the tail end, which is like another type of UI, which is the mobile, then I don't feel that it's really a full stack.
Maybe you're just abusing the term full stack because it's hard to know so much technology cram into your head. Like, I need to know
But you don't have to know
Rails,
everything. You don't
right?
have to know everything. You just need to know one of each portion in the stack.
So rather than like coining the term using the term full stack engineer, it's better to use for full stack team instead, right? Because everyone in the team would kind of have depths in different knowledges.
Well,
Yeah.
it depends. If you're specializing on that, agile uh, people will tell you that that's not really a good idea because you don't want people saying this is not my domain. If you're a part of the development team, then need to know at least you might not be efficient at doing it, but you know how it works so that you can like because these are all connected and whatever it is that you're doing in one area will be affecting these things. And so having at least working knowledge of other things will affect what it is that you're doing right now. Just don't say, this is not my field. I'm not going to think about it anymore. I'm specializing on a particular portion.
I do feel this is like a misinformation or because whenever I look like agile literature, right? I think a lot of people confuse between the term like uh, I wanted to say full stack team. I don't think that's the term that they use. But like, for example, if you look at like the Scrum guide and all, they just say the team has to complete it, right? There's no. I think it's very easily to confuse that everybody has to have enough knowledge to push things end to end. I think in today's development stack, it's kind of hard. Like for example, right? You talk about mobile. If the way the organization structures the teams to be feature teams, right? Like you develop a feature from end to end, right? All the way from mobile to the front end web to back end and whatever infrastructure that needs to be handled. What's I going with this? It's very different compared to like having this is a front end team, this is a mobile team, this is the DevOps team.
Definitely. It depends on how you structure the teams. If it's a feature team, then everyone needs to know how to do things. If you're structuring it as like it's a mobile team and then you have your front end and you have your back end team, then everyone on the back end team needs to know everything that needs to be done for their team to succeed.
Although I wouldn't agree with the notion that a feature team, everybody needs to know everything. Because for me, it's hard, right? Like, let's say I'm a Rails engineer, and now I have to, like, I can't know enough. I can know enough React Native to be dangerous, as in dangerous to me and the team. I can write very bad React Native code.
So let's try this. So yeah, let's say we're working together. I'm a front end I'm a React. So let's say I'm an iOS developer, right?
Okay.
And you're a Rails developer. If I pair with you every day on doing something both on the Rails side and also on the iOS side, in 4 weeks, won't you have at least working knowledge of the things that we paired with?
I would say that's a fair notion, but that shouldn't be the expectation. Like you shouldn't expect just because we spend
that's the
a
thing,
lot.
right? But that's actually the expectation. That is what we want. That's the point of pairing, is to make sure knowledge does not get siloed with just the people. It's sharing the knowledge within the team such that everyone in the team can rely on each other. We don't push things to another person just because they're like they have the how they call it, they have the expertise. So everyone needs to be experts on the project. And what happens there is that the success is not of the individual people, it's about the team. Like you don't say, oh, this feature didn't get developed because GUI, our mobile developer, was sick. Like you might get a hit on productivity, but you don't say the feature is going to fail because nobody can do it. Like that's not what business will expect from a software development team. Again, this is the point of like the agile stuff. Like, you don't want specialists in the team. You want people to know about, like, you will start off with specialists, but as the team evolves, you get this kind of interactions between people.
Agree. Like the point you made is sick, either sick on leave or basically not available. Then anything that depended on him get stuck. Like,
Yeah,
it's doesn't make sense. Although the
yeah.
second person is not efficient, but still things move on, things
Mhm.
flow. We can still continue. Yeah, understand that. But
Again,
yeah,
think about pair programming, which is like one of the hallmarks, like one of the biggest things being emphasized in agile development. Like, if you pair with everyone, you will if you do it correctly, people are going to learn about the other things that people know. And you don't have to just pair about the people that you're, unless it's like it's a backend team. Of course, you can't pair with a different team mate, right? Because it's you have different features. But if you're working within your own team, then that the people within that team share knowledge, and there are no silos within that team.
The thing is, I always thought that way as well. Like I used to think that, yeah, like okay, so I guess a bit of context, right? So previously I work in a team where they just do web. We just work on web apps, right? And everybody knows how to do everything from end to end, right? From writing like React front end, writing the TypeScript back end, all the way to like deploying the code. Right? Everybody knows how to do it. And in that case, that kind of makes sense because the stack is small. Like the way I see it's like small. And then I moved to where I'm working now, and then there's like mobile teams. There's like two different platforms, right? Because there's iOS and Android, and then there's backend, and the front end web is a different stack as well. So when I look at this, to me, when you bring a feature team together, I kind of understand. Yes, like if an iOS developer sits with like the backend, maybe there's knowledge of osmosis happening, right? Or I kind of know what's going on in iOS now, and maybe they know Rails better. But again, to me, the expectation is not to like just because you hang out, you know long
Yeah,
enough that can I get finished this thought first? I wanted to say, just because this, like, for me, having like cross-functional team together instead of like you not just because you're a backend engineer together with the same team with a mobile engineer, suddenly you know what they're doing after enough pairing. Like I wouldn't totally agree with that, but for me, the benefits I see this kind of feature team, cross-functional team over like having a front-end team, having a mobile team, having a back-end team is that they can work closer, right? Rather than like the front-end team say backend team, when are you going to finish the API? I need your API, and then they're just like API is done, but they never communicate on like what's the API supposed to pass and how is the mobile supposed to render, right? Rather, to me, I see the benefit of cross-functionality as this, right? The mobile engineer and the backend engineer can sit together and like, okay, we kind of need this API. How are you going to designing it, and then this sort of thing, right? Rather than like, to me, the silos I see are the teams itself, other functional teams itself. That's why I wouldn't necessarily agree that just because we're in a team, suddenly the backend knows how to do mobile.
yeah.
But
I think that what you're calling team is not a team. They just happen to be working together temporarily, and then they go back to their functional teams, right?
no,
Because
like
if
I'm saying, like a fully cross-functional
yeah,
team, right? You have mobile engineer and backend engineer and the
oh,
front-end web engineer.
if this fully featured cross-functional team work together for 2-3 years, probably more, I doubt that they're going to be like
Yeah.
strictly staying
Okay.
in like
But
your
but this
thing,
is
right?
the context, right? Like if the
Hmm.
teams is stable for 2-3 years, but people
Yeah,
move and new stack happens, and I think it's
yeah.
hard to stabilize to that point.
It's
But yes, I agree. I agree.
it's just like when you're making your Milo ice, right? Like, it takes some time for the Milo and for the sugar and for all of whatever it's you're adding to mix together. But after enough time stirring, they all blend together. It's the same with teams. You might start off with your like specializations, but as you like it again, a team is well, in the agile sense, a development team is stable. Like you don't have like, oh, I'm going to be here for 4 weeks and then I'm going to switch to a different like people. That's not a team. That's people working together for a feature, and then you don't stay together. I would agree with you if that's the case that people are not going to to learn the specializations of other people because it's too short of a time. You're not going to be pairing enough to know. It's just more efficient to just work on the stuff that you know and then just collaborate. So that's collaboration. But a team of 2, 3 years together, pairing almost every day, they're going to be learning these things. But again, these
Agree.
are different ways of arranging things. If it so happens that your team, your stable team, only does backend development because that's how the company is structured, of course, nobody will expect the backend developers to learn mobile development because they're not even exposed to it. Maybe on stand-ups, like, okay, the mobile development has this request for the APIs, for the API layer, this is the JSON payload, etc. But that's not enough uh, exposure to mobile development to know about what they're doing.
Yep, yep, yep.
I think
Yep.
as a
Sometimes, yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I think we can go for the chat. I think Jeffrey have a lot.
Hmm.
Talks a lot. Chat. So he said like he is interested in learning more on DevOps, but there's if there's option he doesn't have the
Mm.
confidence to tweak because it
Yeah. So uh, what I really don't like about what's happening on DevOps on Udemy, let's say, or all these things, is the same thing. Like people are making courses on what they think DevOps should be and what's trending on DevOps. So people are now equating DevOps with Kubernetes or Docker or whatever. But uh, it's I would look for courses where a software developer teaches about DevOps. I think that's the angle that we want to look for. Let's say a Rails developer works with DevOps. Because for example, the first thing that you want to do for DevOps is at least if let's say I'm making a course, the first thing that I would want to learn from a DevOps course is Dockerizing my Rails application so that when I move to a different computer, I just do Docker Compose. So let's say I use Docker Compose up, and then it just works. My development machine is there. Like that's one of the first things. But the problem is like people say, okay, you Dockerize your application, but it's for deployment already. I'm not even doing Docker for development. And so I don't even understand what Docker can be used for in a local development and how is it different from a production environment. And like the difference, knowing about the difference would teach you on like what are the efficiencies that are being pushed on production and what are you sacrificing in terms of development speed, right? Because there's a difference. Whereas if you just equate Docker with production deployment, you don't really know what is happening. So yeah, so that's the thing about courses in Udemy. It's not about just the simple basics. The angle is very, very different. It's not about software developers knowing DevOps. It's about DevOps without even considering software development.
yep. Like setting up AWS VM versus Lightsail. I will use Lightsail because
Mhm.
for AWS VM you will deal with VPC immediately when you start to
Mhm. Yeah,
configure,
no, yeah,
which
no. VPC, IAM, like I have no idea what these are. Like, oh, I need to do like my Route 53, whatever. Like, I don't understand all of these things.
correct.
But they're great for efficiencies, like for cost efficiency. If you want to like really optimize your costs, these are the things that you want to learn. But that's a very specialized field away from like, okay, I want a server stack that's configured so I can get my stuff out and deployed.
Yep. The old school way,
Hmm.
like the
Well,
old
yeah,
school
no,
way
no.
on concepts like network. What is network? What is firewall? Rather than what is this tool? No, what is the
Mhm.
network itself? Like
Yeah,
yeah,
that's actually interesting talking about it because one of like a few years ago, um, I forgot which consultancy. It's it's a very popular consultancy in the US from before, from Boston, I forgot. One of the interview questions they asked was like describe the uh, a request from a page request, and like be as detailed as you want, like talk about the whole stack as you want or whatever. Like so, most of the time they are expecting like, okay, you're going to hit the Rails router, and then you have your plugins and all of your no, it's not plugins. Like the I forgot now the term. The
Middleware.
layers, like yeah, the middleware. Yeah, you're right. The middleware will run and all of these things, and then you have your controller. So that's generally the thing that they're looking for. But they also give points like talking about okay that you actually have a DNS resolution happening, and then you have an like your IP. The request travels through the IP connections being forwarded because of TCP, and then uh, like it's accepted by the web server. It could be probably Nginx. Then you have your proxy from behind it if it's set up like that, and then you have your backend application. So that would already signal them that you actually know the whole process from end to end, right? Whereas most software developers will just talk about yeah, if you're good, if you're great, you will talk about the like the yeah the middleware portions, and you have the actions, controls, etc. So it's
Yep.
very telling when you talk about like these things, because it tells that at least it tells the interviewer that the person you're interviewing understands the life cycle, and that they if there is a problem in the application that's not necessarily software side, then this person would know which part of the life cycle to target to focus on. And that's just um, a great a great property to have if you're a developer.
Yep. 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 I think this is a good segue for our upcoming meetup
Mhm.
on next one. So we'll, yeah.
Right. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or because
Nope.
I
Yeah. Well, Jeffrey is just saying about the hype around load balancing, auto scaling, database replica, etc. Well, it really depends on your application. Like, have you started measuring your load, for example? Like, did you try to like, are these things required? It's like a new software developer asking what kind of computer should I buy, right? And then uh, worrying about like mechanical keyboards. Like it's good, but do you need them? Like what kind of application are you developing? Are you doing website development? Are you doing Android development? Are you doing iOS development? You don't like it really depends on what application it is. Are you if you're a very early stage startup, like Linode or DigitalOcean is all you need. If you're on the level of, let's say, Bill Please or Fave, then you probably need to talk to Microsoft or to GitHub, sorry, to Microsoft or to um, uh, AWS or to Google to ask them, hey, can we get some like discounts, because we're this is the amount of traffic that we're going to have, and these are the things that we need. So
Yep.
it I feel that immediately asking for database replicas, immediately asking for like auto scaling, load balancing, etc., is a topic that will come up when you actually need them. Like there will be a point in the application's lifecycle where you will need to think about these things. Like for example, load balancing is you already need to start thinking about it as soon as you get like two servers, right? Like two application servers. What kind of load balancing would you want? Would you want a load a specific load balancer and then two application servers, or would you go for a poor man's load balancer where you have like a DNS round robin, where your A record just has like two entries, and then let your DNS server figure out like, okay, for these people this IP is given, this people this other IP is given. So it really depends on your thing. So courses that emphasize these things, I feel are doing a disservice to DevOps because they're trying to sound as if they know a lot, but they actually don't teach the right basics.
I think fundamentally it's like knowing why we need, like, doesn't just sorry doesn't just apply to what we learn, all the learning that Jeffrey is sharing about, right? Like all the infrastructure stuff, and he just put an example about GraphQL and REST as well. Like a lot of times we need to, even when developing, we need to understand why we are doing this, why we are using a specific, like even why are we using Rails, right? Or whatever, or why are we using Ruby, or if someone talks about using another language, why? Right? I think fundamentally, to me, it comes down to knowing why and when something is needed. Right? So,
Yeah.
like Tristan mentioned, like a lot of all these courses, I think it's good to have this. Right? You know why is this, but at the same time, you also want to, like for me, I want to know when would I use a load balancer. Like Tristan explained earlier, like, what are
And
scenarios I'll use it. Sorry, Tristan, go ahead.
and the best way to know why you're using something is to try different things. Like, why are we using Ruby? Well, try Python, try C Sharp, Dart, whatever. Try JavaScript. Then you'll find out why we I personally why I would prefer Ruby, because Ruby has some things that all of these other languages don't have. Why Rails? Why not Sinatra? Why not Mer, but Hanami? Why not all of these things? Why not Padrino? Because of this, because I've tried them and I have I will use Sinatra for something else and Padrino for something else as well, but majority of the time I will just default to Rails because of certain things, of certain benefits, right? Same thing, like why Nginx instead of like LightTPD or Apache. Like the best way to answer why is to try other things, and then you will know like the differences.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, I think we can start to wrap up.
Yep.
Okay, let me share this. So, so we hinted it a lot of times, but next month we're going to do a code clinic. For one, we don't have a lot of speakers, so technically no speakers. But I think with all this discussion we have today, right, Tristan, you brought up a very good topic for the code clinic next month, is that maybe we can all learn together how to like set up a DO or Linode or anything else and see how it, like I never set up a DO or Linode before, but I've used other things, right? But it'd be interesting for me as well.
Well,
That could be
yeah,
one of
let's do that. Let's do a workshop. I can. Gui, do you know how to use Capistrano? I think Capistrano is like still.
I didn't use Copistrano. Basically, I stick to Bash, a very bare bone. I
Well,
didn't.
I think that's a good thing. We can probably start with a bare bone, like Bash script, to just copy over rsync, maybe rsync, whatever is on your thing there. Then we'll have Capistrano, because Capistrano is just like a glorified Bash script, I would say. It, it it automates a lot of things so that it doesn't look like Bash scripts, but in the end, it's still the same. Like if you know how to deploy by copying things over, then you know how to use Capistrano. It's just it's like a better Bash script basically. So we can start with that maybe.
Yep. I think that will be very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe like a crash course on Nginx. I don't know if Nginx is still the thing for all your own deployments.
I know it's still being used by like my
Yeah.
previous workplace does use Nginx, still uses Nginx actually.
And right now, do you use
Yeah,
Nginx
they
or
still they
Passenger?
still. Sorry, right. So my previous company wasn't using Ruby or Railstack, but they use Nginx in front of it's in front of Tomcat. It was a Java stack, but now we use Passenger.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. For me, I'm using Nginx and with Let's Encrypt.
Yeah,
With
so
all
maybe
the
we can start. We can also do a bit of Nginx configuration, quick Nginx configuration. Then yeah, maybe we'll start with that Nginx configuration because we need a web server. Then we need uh, the deployment, which becomes the application server, and maybe that's it. And we'll do Capistrano, which kind of automates a lot of things.
Yep.
Sounds really
Sounds good.
exciting. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that could be one of the workshop we have for next month's code clinic. But if anybody's watching this and if you have like code that you want to kind of like maybe refactor or ask advice about, feel free to come with those as well. We can divide up the sessions accordingly with interest and all. So yeah.
Jeffrey is saying Caddy 2 might be simpler to set up than Nginx. I don't know. I haven't tried Caddy. I guess simple is relative. I've used Nginx for many years now, and so for me, Nginx is simple. So it might be different for people. Actually, we don't even probably need to use Nginx. We can just run Rails S in production under screen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just need to hook up to the IP address, then it's running. You don't need
Oh
Nginx
yeah, you
upfront.
need to set up your DNS to run on this IP, and then you just need to bind Rails server into the port 80, and
Yep,
that's
port
it.
80, correct. Yep.
I mean that's a valid way of deployment as well.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah, production without a well, again, it depends. So Jeffrey's saying, isn't it a bad idea? It depends on the situation, right? Like
Yeah, you need to know,
if you just
know
say
why.
spoon, yeah, if you just say spoon, is a spoon good? Like a spoon is a bad idea, but I don't know what kind of situation are you talking about. If you're saying if you're eating a steak, then a spoon is a bad idea. But if you're eating rice, maybe a spoon is okay. Like it's not. If it's soup, then it's a great idea, right? It depends on the situation.
Yep. Yeah, you can put a Cloudflare in front of it.
And if you're running a pure API Rails deployment, for example, you won't even need a web server because it's pure API.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but
Yep.
yes, Jeffrey, it'll be very good if you can join us next week during the workshop as well. And if you have any questions, we can all discuss. And like I mentioned earlier, if anybody else watching this, you have questions, not just about infra, about any Ruby code or anything, join us next month on the code clinic, and we'll manage. Right, this has been fun. Okay, I think that's about it.
Yep.
Bye.
Right.
See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.